My own son-in-law tried to destroy me. But I'm 58, not dead yet. And I know exactly how to fight back. My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm a retired district attorney. My daughter Emily screamed in shock as her husband Brad stood there, his arm still raised after hurling the wine glass straight at my face. You useless old woman. When I pour myself a drink, you stay quiet, he yelled, stumbling drunk in my own dining room. Right then, something inside me just snapped. After 30 years in the DA's office, I knew the law inside and out. And I knew exactly how to use it to show him who really runs this house. But hold on, before we continue, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far our stories reach. Now let's get back to it. Dinner started off calm enough. Just another Tuesday night meal I've been cooking ever since Emily and Brad moved into my home 8 months back. Same old story, right? They were saving up for their own place. They just needed time. 8 months later, still here living rent-free. I'd made a pot roast that took hours in the oven. My best china was laid out perfectly. The crystal glasses I got from my mama sparkled bright under the chandelier's glow. These little touches, they mattered to me. 30 years putting criminals behind bars taught me one thing. Routine and order keep you sane. Brad showed up already on edge. Walked through the door around 7:30. Tossed his jacket on my good sofa. Headed straight for the bar in the living room corner. Poured himself a huge glass of red wine. Complaining about work like always. That moron boss of mine thinks he can push me around, he muttered. Made me redo the whole damn presentation. Said I was missing key details. He downed that glass in 3 giant gulps. Refilled it quick before even sitting down at the table. Emily shot me an apologetic look. She helped carry plates to the dining room. My daughter's always been a people pleaser. Hates conflict, avoids it at any cost. During dinner I tried keeping things civil. Asked about Emily's nursing job. Mentioned a book I was reading. Anything to ease the growing tension Brad carried with him. But every time we tried talking, Brad cut in with some snarky comment. Or he'd roll his eyes like some bratty teenager, not a 35-year-old man. With each interruption he drank more wine. By the 3rd bottle I'd had enough. Brad held out his empty glass toward me, like I was some servant waiting on him. I said simply, "I think you've had enough for tonight, Brad." He froze solid, glass still up in the air. His eyes locked on me like he couldn't believe what he'd heard. "What did you say?" "You heard me. You've had enough. This is my house. I won't watch you get wasted like this at my table." It was like lighting a match near gasoline. His face went beet red. Not just from wine, but from sudden rage that had been bubbling under for months it seemed. "Your house," he laughed out loud. A bitter cutting sound. "Just 'cause we're stuck living in this dusty old museum with you doesn't mean you can boss us around like little kids." "Brad, please." Emily touched his arm gently. Brad yanked his hand away real rough. "No, Emily. I'm sick of this. Your mom treats us like we're intruders. Like we ain't good enough to walk on her precious hardwood floors." He turned back, glaring at me. "You know what your problem is? You can't accept you ain't the hotshot de Margaret Hayes no more. Now you're just a lonely old lady, retired and forgotten. You gotta control everything and everyone around you just to feel important." I stayed calm. Years in court taught me never react when someone provokes you. If that's how you really feel, Maybe it's time you found somewhere else to live. Mom! Emily cried out, horrified. Brad smiled then. The kind of smile that don't reach the eyes. Servants shouldn't talk back to their superiors. He shoved the glass toward me again. Now pour me more wine. No. That's all I said. One word. In a flash, too fast for me to react, Brad threw the glass right at my face. Hard. The glass smashed against my right temple. Shattered into pieces. I felt sharp pain from the impact, then warm blood running down the side of my face. Emily screamed bloody murder. Brad just stood there breathing heavy, almost surprised by his own action but showing zero remorse. I brought my hand up, touched my temple, looked at my fingers now stained bright red. The silence in that room was absolutely deafening. 30 years locking up violent criminals, and now I'm bleeding at my own dining table. Emily, I said with a calm I didn't feel, take your husband to your room. Right now. Emily rushed over, pulling Brad away. He still looked stunned by what he'd done. I heard their footsteps going up the stairs. Heard the bedroom door slam shut hard. I walked to the bathroom, examined the cut in the mirror. Wasn't too deep, but it would bleed plenty. Head wounds always do. As I cleaned it with cold water, my thoughts organized themselves like a prosecutor building a case. I documented everything with my phone. Took photos of the cut, the blood stain on my white blouse, the broken glass shards all over the dining room floor. I collected every fragment, put them in a plastic baggie. Evidence. 3 decades in the justice system taught me this. Evidence is everything. That night's sleep never came. I sat in my study, ice pack pressed against my temple. Started outlining my plan. Not for revenge, mind you. Revenge is emotional, impulsive, and messy. What I needed was justice. I needed to protect my daughter Emily, and protect my home. At 12:06 a.m., with the wound already forming a nasty purple bruise, I picked up my phone. Seattle Police Department. How may I help you? I need to report an assault case. The officer showed up at 7:30 a.m. Morning sun just starting to peek through the curtain cracks. Brad and Emily still sleeping upstairs, exhausted from last night's explosive drama. I opened the door. The police officer, middle-aged guy with gray streaks in his hair, introduced himself politely. Good morning, ma'am. I'm Officer Davis. Got a call about an assault incident. I let him in. Took him straight to the dining room. The glass piece is still preserved carefully in the corner, marked with little numbered labels I'd made during my sleepless hours. This is where it happened, I explained quietly. Didn't want to wake those two upstairs. My son-in-law threw this glass directly at my face after I refused to pour him more wine. He'd already had way too much to drink. I showed Officer Davis the photos on my phone, the cut on my temple, the blood-soaked blouse. The officer wrote everything down. Professional expression, no judgment showing. Is the person who assaulted you still in this residence? Yes, officer. Sleeping upstairs with my daughter. Do you wish to file a formal complaint? I hesitated just for a second, thinking about Emily, but then I remembered Brad's look as he threw that glass. That certainty he had that he could assault me in my own house and just get away with it. Yes, officer. I want to file a formal complaint. We sat at the kitchen table. He filled out the police report. Full name of the perpetrator, our family relationship, detailed description of what went down. I gave him information in the same tone I used to use dictating legal briefs. Clear, precise, showing no emotion. We were just finishing up when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Emily appeared in the kitchen doorway, eyes puffy from sleep. Confusion turned to horror when she saw the police officer. "Mom, what's happening?" Before I could answer, Brad appeared behind her, also confused at first. But his face changed quick to anger when he saw my injured temple and the cop sitting at my table. "What the hell is all this?" he demanded. Officer Davis stood up, calm and professional. "Mr. Brad Sullivan? I'm here investigating an assault complaint that occurred at this residence last night." Emily looked at me, eyes wide, disbelief written all over. "You called the cops on Brad?" "He assaulted me," Emily threw a glass at my face, cut me open. I kept my voice firm, no hint of remorse. "It was an accident. He was drunk," Emily protested, desperate now. "Being intoxicated ain't a valid defense for physical assault, ma'am," Officer Davis commented. Tone professional but real firm. Brad stepped forward, fists clenched tight. "You can't be serious. This is ridiculous. It was just a family argument." "A family argument that resulted in physical injury," I replied calmly. "And in my own home." Officer Davis addressed Brad directly. "Sir, I need you to come with me to the station to give a statement." "What?" Brad yelled out. "You gonna arrest me over a broken glass?" "At this time I'm requesting you provide a statement. Depending on facts confirmed, you could be charged with assault and battery." Emily was crying now, looking back and forth between me and the officer, pleading with her eyes. "Please, Mom, don't do this. We can work this out as a family." I looked at my daughter, felt a sharp pain that had nothing to do with the cut on my temple. "Emily, we've been trying to work this out as a family for 8 months straight. Last night Brad crossed a line you don't ever come back from." Officer Davis asked Brad to get dressed properly to come with him to the station. Brad stomped upstairs, Emily right behind him, begging him to stay calm. I stood alone with the officer for a few minutes. He looked at me with an expression I recognized well. The kind of look veteran cops give when they're trying to understand the family mess behind an incident. "Ma'am, are you certain you want to proceed with this complaint? Family situations can sometimes be." "Officer," I interrupted, polite but firm. "I worked 30 years as a district attorney. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I know what the legal consequences will be." He looked surprised, then nodded slowly. New respect in his gaze. Brad came back downstairs, now dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, hair pulled back in a messy way. Emily followed close behind, still crying silent tears. "This ain't over," Brad said coldly as he passed me. "You're gonna regret doing this to me." Officer Davis warned him quick not to make threats, which only made Brad even more furious. As the officer led him outside, Emily turned to me, her eyes red from all the crying. "How could you do this to him? He's my husband, and I'm your mother," I answered simply. "And this is my house." The front door closed hard. Silence filled the house again. Emily just stared at me for several long seconds, like she didn't even recognize me. Then she ran upstairs fast. I heard the bedroom door slam shut again. I sat down in the living room armchair, suddenly exhausted, bone-tired. The bruise throbbed something awful, but the physical pain was almost a relief compared to the pain of seeing Emily's face, that look of betrayal. Still, I had no regrets. Not one. Years in the courtroom taught me this truth. Justice don't always seem fair. Not in the moment it's being applied. But it's still necessary. 2 hours passed. Emily came downstairs finally, carrying a duffel bag. Her face looked determined, but her eyes still swollen and red. I'm going to pick up Brad at the police station. We'll stay at Karen's place until we figure out what to do next. Karen was a friend of theirs, lived in a cramped apartment across town. It wasn't a real solution. We both knew that. Emily, I began softly, trying to keep my voice gentle. You don't have to leave. This is your home too, sweetheart. She laughed then. A hollow, empty sound. This house stopped being my home the moment you decided to call the cops on my husband. He assaulted me, Emily. Right at my own dining room table. He was drunk. He lost his temper. People make mistakes, Mom. And people gotta answer for their mistakes, I replied, my voice firmer now. Especially when those mistakes involve physical violence. Emily shook her head, disappointed. It's always been like this with you. The tough prosecutor. The law above everything. Even above your own daughter. That hurt worse than the cut on my temple. But I didn't let it show. It's because I love you that I'm doing this, Emily. Brad is abusive, honey. And you're trapped in that relationship. You just can't see it yet. Don't you dare analyze my marriage. Emily snapped back. You've always hated Brad. Always thought I deserved someone better. And you do deserve better, I said calmly. You deserve someone who respects you. Who respects your family too. Emily grabbed the car keys from the coffee table. I'm getting my husband. Then we're coming back for the rest of our stuff. When the door closed behind her, I let out a long, tired sigh. The house went silent again. But it wasn't the peaceful silence I used to treasure. It was heavy silence, loaded with consequences I couldn't take back. I spent the rest of that day in a weird fog, going back and forth between doubt and certainty. Had I done the right thing? Had I lost my daughter forever? The questions spun around in my mind as I tried to read, tried to eat something, tried to distract myself from it all. That night my phone rang. It was Emily. Mom. Her voice sounded cold, real distant. We're at Karen's place now. Brad was released with a court summons for a hearing next week. We'll come by tomorrow to pick up our belongings. Emily, you don't have to. I've already made my decision, Mom. I'm standing by my husband. After she hung up, I sat down at my office desk, opened a new folder on my computer, named it Case Brad Sullivan. Inside, I started creating documents to record every single stage of this process. Every decision made, every piece of evidence collected. For 3 decades straight, I built cases against all kinds of criminals. Murderers, thieves, abusers. Now I was building a case to save my daughter from a toxic marriage. Even if right now, in this moment, she absolutely hated me for doing it. The next morning, while waiting for Emily and Brad to come collect their things, I called an old friend. Rick and I worked together for years. He was a detective, I was a prosecutor. Dream team, they called us. He retired before I did. Now he runs a small private investigation firm. Margaret. It's been forever. How you been? His deep voice brought me instant comfort. To what do I owe the pleasure? I need your help, Rick. It's a delicate situation. I explained everything. The assault, the police report, How Emily left with Brad. I need to know more about Brad Sullivan. I got a real bad feeling about their finances, about how they're really living. Rick didn't ask unnecessary questions. He knew me too well. Send me his details. I'll dig into it real discreet-like. An hour later, I parked my car 2 blocks from the house. Waited and watched. I didn't want to be there when they came for their stuff. Direct confrontation now would only make things a whole lot worse. From where I sat, I saw Emily's car arrive. She and Brad went inside using the key Emily still had. I watched that house for almost 2 hours, occasionally seeing one of them at the window carrying boxes moving quickly. When they finally left, the car was packed full. Emily looked back at the house one last time before getting in. Even from that distance, I could see she was crying hard. Brad, on the other hand, looked irritated, gesturing wildly, saying something I couldn't hear. I waited 20 more minutes before heading back home. Their absence felt physical. Empty spaces where stuff had been. Silence where conversations used to be. The guest room they'd been using was half empty now. They left the furniture obviously, but all personal items were completely gone. In the closet, I noticed something missing. One of my jewelry pieces, a gold locket that belonged to my mama. Emily knew how much I treasured that thing. Was it an oversight or a small act of revenge? I chose to believe it was an oversight. The next few days brought oppressive silence. Emily didn't call me, didn't answer my texts. I tried respecting her space. But each day without any news was its own special torture. On Wednesday morning, I got Rick's first report. Sitting in my study, I opened the email attachment with real apprehension. The discoveries were worse. Way worse than I'd imagined. Brad had been fired from his job 3 months earlier. He wasn't just having problems with his boss like he'd claimed at those dinners. He was unemployed, hiding it from everyone, even from Emily. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Brad had 6 credit cards, all maxed out completely, totaling a debt of nearly $90,000. Worse still, 3 of those cards were in Emily's name, likely opened with a power of attorney, or using her information without her knowing. The report showed something else too. Something that genuinely scared the hell out of me. For big withdrawals from Emily's 401k account in the last 3 months, adding up to $45,000. To make those withdrawals, Brad would have needed access to Emily's passwords, or he forged her signature outright. There was more stuff. Bounce check complaints from local stores. An eviction notice from a previous apartment that they never mentioned. And most worrying of all, text conversations captured from social media where Brad talked with his buddies about inheriting a house soon. When the old bat finally kicks the bucket. The old bat. That was me. I felt nauseous, genuinely sick to my stomach. This wasn't just a case of bad temper or a disrespectful son-in-law. This was systematic, calculated. Brad was drowning Emily financially while planning a future built on my death. I printed the entire report, put it in a locked folder. I needed more proof. Needed to understand the full scope of this situation before confronting Emily with these discoveries. I called Rick again right away. I need you to keep investigating, especially those 401k withdrawals. If we get solid proof that Brad acted without Emily's permission, we're talking about serious financial crimes here. I'm on it, Margaret, Rick replied quickly. And hey, be careful. If this guy's financially desperate and he believes he can inherit something from you, well, He didn't need to finish that sentence. 30 years in the criminal system taught me this. Money is one of the most powerful motivators for desperate acts. Violent, desperate acts. That night I changed all the locks on every door. A necessary precaution. Couldn't be too careful. The following week brought the preliminary hearing on the assault charge. I went to the courthouse where I'd worked for decades. This time, though, as a victim, not a prosecutor. Felt strange, real strange. Sitting on the other side. Seeing former colleagues. They greeted me with concerned expressions. I heard whispers in the hallways. Brad showed up with his lawyer. Young guy in a cheap suit, looked fresh out of law school. Emily wasn't with him, which surprised me. I'd expected my daughter to be there supporting her husband. The judge was Patricia Coleman, a competent woman I knew casually from my last years before retirement. She recognized me right away, nodded discreetly in my direction. The whole procedure was brief and direct. The prosecutor laid out the assault charges. Misdemeanor battery. Brad's lawyer argued back. Said it was an isolated incident caused by stress and alcohol with no real intention to cause harm. Your Honor, the lawyer said, my client has zero criminal record and he's deeply sorry for what happened. We're requesting an alternative measure like community service instead of jail time. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up with the same posture I'd maintained for decades in these rooms. Your Honor, I don't seek revenge or harsh punishment. I'm seeking justice and primarily protection. The assault happened in my own home at my own table, by someone I sheltered out of pure kindness. I respectfully request that in addition to any punitive measure the court deems fit, a restraining order be issued preventing the defendant from approaching my residence. I saw Brad's face go pale white. A restraining order meant he couldn't return to my house. The house where he and Emily had been living. The house he apparently hoped to inherit someday. The judge thought for a few moments before announcing her decision. Given the nature of the incident and the relationship between the parties, I've determined that the defendant shall complete 6 months of community service and mandatory participation in an anger management program. Additionally, I'm issuing a temporary restraining order prohibiting the defendant from approaching within 100 yards of the victim's residence for a period of 90 days. After which we'll reevaluate the situation. Brad's lawyer tried protesting, arguing the restraining order was way too excessive given the family context. But Judge Coleman stayed firm. Domestic violence is no less serious for occurring among family members, counselor. Quite the contrary. As I left that courtroom, I noticed Emily sitting way back on the last bench. Our eyes met for a brief second before she looked away fast. Got up quick to meet Brad in the hallway. I wanted to approach her, explain why I was doing all this, tell her I'd discovered some real worrying things. But the moment wasn't right. Emily wasn't ready to listen to me, not yet anyway. I went back home. Added the hearing transcript and a copy of the restraining order to my Case Brad Sullivan folder. The folder was getting real thick now, both literally and figuratively. 2 days later I got an unexpected call. It was Emily. Mom. Her voice sounded exhausted. Almost didn't recognize it. We need to talk. Face to face. We agreed to meet at a neutral spot. A coffee shop far from both my house and Karen's apartment where they were crashing. I showed up 15 minutes early. Chose a corner table where we could have some real privacy. Emily walked in right on time. She looked thinner with dark circles she couldn't hide. She was wearing a turtleneck sweater despite the warm weather, something that immediately set off my alarms. "You okay, honey?" I asked soon as she sat down. "I'm dealing with the situation," she replied short, avoiding my gaze while grabbing the menu. We ordered coffee, black for me with cream for her like always. When the waitress left, we sat in this awkward silence, neither of us knowing exactly how to start. "The restraining order really complicated things," Emily finally said. "We've been at Karen's place for 2 weeks now. The couch is killing Brad's back and Karen's patience is wearing real thin. Can't y'all rent a place?" I suggested gently, keeping my voice real neutral, no accusations. Emily let out a bitter laugh. "With what money, Mom? My nursing salary barely covers our bills. And Brad," she hesitated, looking down at her hands, "Brad hasn't found a new job yet." So she still believed that lie, still had no clue. I took a sip of my coffee, thinking carefully about how to proceed. Confronting her directly with everything I discovered might make her shut down completely. "Emily, if you're having money troubles, I can help you out." "Just me." She finally looked up at me directly. "What's that mean?" "Just me. It means I worry about you, sweetheart. And I want to make sure you're okay. But I got conditions for that help." "What kind of conditions?" Her voice got tense, real defensive. "I want you to review your accounts. All of them. Your savings, your retirement, your credit card statements. Everything." Emily frowned hard. "Why would I do that?" "Because I got reason to believe you ain't aware of your true financial situation." "What are you talking about, Mom?" Emily slammed her cup down, spilled some coffee. "If this is some twisted attempt to turn me against Brad." "It ain't an attempt," I interrupted gently. "It's a request based on hard facts I discovered." "Emily, when's the last time you checked your 401k account?" Her expression changed just slightly. A flicker of doubt crossed her face. "I don't know. Few months ago, maybe. I set it up for automatic deposits." "Why? And the withdrawals? Did you authorize any withdrawals recently?" She went completely still, frozen in place. "What withdrawals?" I opened my purse, took out a paper. A statement from her retirement fund that Rick had obtained. I slid it across the table toward her. The document showed clearly 4 large withdrawals in the last 3 months. Emily grabbed the paper with trembling hands, her face losing all its color as she read. This can't be real. I never authorized this. I swear I never did." "There's more, honey," I said gently, taking out more documents from my purse. Credit card statements in her name with purchases she clearly hadn't made. Expensive jewelry. Transfers to accounts we didn't recognize. Emily flipped through those papers fast, her breathing speeding up more and more. "How did you get all this stuff?" "I hired a private investigator. After Brad assaulted me, I realized something was very wrong here." "You investigated my husband?" Her voice went up, real indignant now. "I investigated to protect you," I replied firmly. "And it seems I was right to be worried. Emily, Brad was fired 3 months ago. You got 6 cards maxed out completely, 3 of them in your name. He withdrew 45 grand from your retirement without your permission. Honey, this is a serious crime." Emily closed her eyes tight, took several deep breaths. When she opened them, there was a mix of so many emotions in her gaze. Anger, confusion, fear. and finally a flash of recognition. "The bills," she whispered softly. He always said he was paying the bills, but money kept disappearing. I thought it was because my salary's low, that we weren't managing well enough. "He's stealing from you, Emily. Plain and simple." Emily shook her head slowly. "No, there's gotta be an explanation. Maybe he was desperate after losing his job. Maybe he didn't want to worry me about it. He probably planned to pay it back when he gets a new job." "Emily," I said with all the gentleness I could muster, "there's something else you really need to see." I handed her the last document. Screenshots of Brad's text messages with his buddies where he talked about inheriting a house soon, when the old bat kicks the bucket, and putting up with the old lady for a few more months till we sort out our money problems. Emily read those messages. Once, twice, 3 times. Like she couldn't quite process the words in front of her. Then I saw it. Something in her face just broke completely. A tear rolled down her cheek, followed by another and another. "He always said," she whispered through tears, "you didn't accept us because you were too old-fashioned. That's why you treated us with such coldness. Emily, I never cared who you chose to love. I care about how that person treats my daughter." She wiped tears away with a napkin. "When we moved into your house, he said it'd be temporary, just till we saved money for our own place. But something always came up. An unexpected bill, some emergency. He said we were saving, but I never saw the money grow. Not once." I reached across the table, held her hand tight. "Honey, it's way too hot to wear a turtleneck." Emily went pale, real pale. Instinctively pulled the collar up higher. "It's nothing, Mom. Really." "Is it him? Has Brad been physically violent with you too?" Her eyes filled up with tears again. Slowly, real slowly, she pulled the collar down, revealing finger marks on her neck. Yellowish bruises that were fading. "It was after the court hearing," she whispered so soft. "He was furious about the restraining order. Said I should have testified for him. That I chose you over him." Emily looked down, ashamed. "I'm so scared, Mom. I don't know what to do." The anger I felt in that exact moment was different from the cold fury I'd experienced when Brad threw that glass. This was protective rage, primal and fierce. But I couldn't let it control me now. Emily needed clarity, not more emotional chaos. "I want you to come home with me today," I said, real firm. "Right this second. Brad can't approach the house now because of that restraining order. You'll be safe there. As for your stuff, we'll send someone to grab it later. The important thing now is getting you out of that situation. Immediately. He's gonna lose his mind when he finds out I left him. That's exactly why you gotta leave, Emily. This is textbook abuse patterns. Classic stuff." Emily stayed quiet for a long moment, looking at all those documents scattered in front of us. Hard proof of Brad's financial betrayal and emotional manipulation. Finally, she nodded slightly, just a little. "Okay, Mom. Let's go home." On the drive back, Emily stayed silent, looking out the window. Only when I parked in the garage did she speak again. How did I let this happen? How did I not see the signs? "Abuse rarely starts out obvious, honey," I replied, turning off the engine. "It begins with small lies, little controls that gradually get worse. By the time you realize it, you're already caught in a web." We walked into that house. The house that was always hers too. The house where she grew up. Emily stopped dead in the living room, looking around slowly like seeing the place for the first time. "I'm gonna prepare your room," I said softly, going up the stairs. Emily's old room was still exactly as it had always been. I'd preserved it when she left for nursing school. Kept it the same when she and Brad moved into the guest room. It was a refuge from the past, a place where she could feel safe again. I changed the sheets, opened the windows wide, let in some fresh air, put fresh flowers on the nightstand. Small gestures really to tell her she was welcome, that this was her home still. When I came back down, I found Emily sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. She looked up when I walked in. "He's called 20 times already. Sent 30-something texts asking where I am. You don't gotta answer right now." "I have to, Mom. If I don't answer, he'll show up here. Restraining order or not." Emily typed out a brief message. "I need time to think things through. I'm somewhere safe. Please don't look for me today." Seconds later, her phone started ringing, Brad's name flashing on the screen. Emily rejected the call with shaking hands, then turned off the device completely. "What do I do now?" she asked, looking totally lost. "One step at a time, sweetheart," I replied, sitting down next to her. "First off, we gotta protect your finances. Tomorrow we're changing all your bank passwords and notifying the bank about those unauthorized transactions. Then we see a good lawyer to discuss your legal options." "Legal options?" she repeated slowly, like tasting the words. "You mean like divorce?" "Among other things. What he did, those unauthorized withdrawals, the credit cards in your name, those are financial crimes. Emily, you get to choose whether to press charges. But we gotta stop him from continuing this." Emily nodded slowly. "I never thought I'd be in this kind of situation. Always thought I'd recognize abuse if it happened to me. Nobody thinks it'll happen to them. That's exactly why abuse keeps happening. It's disguised real clever. It's justified away. And it makes victims doubt themselves completely." That night I fixed us dinner while Emily took a long hot bath. We ate a simple meal. Quiet most of the time. But it was a different kind of silence. Not the angry silence from the past weeks, but a silence of reflection, of reconnecting again. Before heading to bed, Emily hugged me tight. First real hug in weeks and weeks. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she whispered softly. "I'd never give up on you, baby girl," I replied back, holding her a little tighter. That night, lying in bed, I heard Emily crying in the next room. The sound absolutely broke my heart. But it also brought this strange relief. She was home now. She was finally safe. And the crying, well, that was part of the healing process. Next day, just like we'd planned, we went to the bank. Emily canceled every card, changed all her passwords, blocked Brad's access to everything. We started the process of disputing those unauthorized 401k withdrawals. The bank manager, after seeing the documents and hearing our story, strongly suggested Emily file a formal complaint for fraud and theft. "We'll think about it," was all Emily could manage to say right then anyway. That afternoon we met with a family law attorney specializing in domestic abuse cases. Linda was middle-aged with kind eyes but a real firm presence. Exactly the type of person we needed. "Based on what you've told me and these documents you brought, we got a solid case for divorce on grounds of marital misconduct," Linda explained carefully. "The financial abuse is well documented, and with evidence of physical abuse too, we can request a permanent protective order. not just the temporary one that already exists. Emily took a deep breath. What if I don't want him going to jail? I understand completely your hesitation, Linda replied gently. Lots of abuse victims have real conflicting feelings about criminally prosecuting their abusers. We can focus first on the divorce itself and protecting your assets. Criminal complaints can be a separate decision you make when you're ready for it. Leaving that office, Emily seemed both exhausted and relieved all at once. Feels like I'm waking up finally from a nightmare, she said quietly as we drove home. It's a process, honey, I replied softly. Won't get solved overnight. I know that. But now at least I'm walking in the right direction. That night got interrupted by loud noise at the front door around 10 o'clock. Furious pounding. The doorbell ringing over and over. Emily and I looked at each other on the couch where we'd been watching a movie. It's him, Emily whispered, fear all over her voice. He can't get in, I assured her quick, grabbing my phone. And he's violating that restraining order. I'm calling 911 right now. The banging just kept getting louder as I reported the whole situation to the emergency operator. My son-in-law is violating a restraining order, trying to force his way in. We need a patrol car immediately, please. Emily. Brad's voice came right through the door. I know you're in there. Open this damn door right now. Emily shrank back on the sofa, trembling all over. I went to her, held both her hands. It's gonna be okay. He can't get in here. Police are on their way already. Brad kept yelling, threatening 1 minute, begging the next. The noise got the neighbors' attention. I saw lights turning on in nearby houses, faces appearing in the windows. When the patrol car pulled up finally 7 minutes later, Brad was still on that porch, now kicking the door real hard. Police found him in clear violation of the restraining order. We watched through the front window as they arrested him. He kept looking back at the house, screaming Emily's name even as they put him in that patrol car. What's gonna happen to him now? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He'll be arrested for violating the order, I replied calmly. This has some serious consequences attached. That night Emily slept in my room, just like when she was little and had bad nightmares. But this time the nightmare was outside, getting taken away. Next morning I got a call from the detective in charge of the restraining order case. Brad would be kept in custody until the bail hearing scheduled for tomorrow. Due to his recent violent history and clear demonstration of instability, it's likely the judge will set real strict conditions for his release, the detective explained. This could include electronic ankle monitoring and constant supervision. I thanked him for the info, then hung up. Feeling this mix of relief and concern, Emily was still sleeping. Last night's events had completely drained her. I fixed breakfast, left a little note explaining where she could find me. I had a meeting scheduled with Rick, my investigator buddy, to discuss some new discoveries he'd made. We met up at his small office downtown. Rick looked real worried when he greeted me. Margaret, we found more stuff about Brad Sullivan. Things you really need to see here. He opened up a thick folder, spread documents out on the table. Police records there from 2 different cities, both involving Brad in cases of domestic violence and financial fraud too. He's done this before, Rick explained carefully. In Phoenix 6 years back and in Denver 4 years ago. In both cases he got involved with women who were financially comfortable, moved into their homes, started manipulating their finances slowly, and eventually turned violent on them. What happened in those cases? In the first one, the victim dropped all the charges after Brad promised to change his ways. In the second case, there was a settlement out of court. The victim paid a good amount just to get Brad completely out of her life. He's a serial predator, I murmured quietly, looking through all those documents. And Emily was just his most recent victim. His latest target. Exactly right. And there's something else. Rick hesitated a bit, like he was choosing his words real carefully. We found evidence that Brad recently researched life insurance stuff and inheritance laws. Specifically how to guarantee inheritance rights through marriage alone. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The implications were crystal clear and absolutely terrifying. You think he was? I couldn't even finish that sentence. Can't say for sure he was planning something specific, Rick replied honestly. But the pattern's real worrying here. He drained Emily's financial resources completely. He knew you got a valuable house plus other assets. Those inheritance searches combined with those texts about the old bat kicking the bucket, it paints a real disturbing picture. I left Rick's office with that folder of documents heavy in my hands, even heavier worry in my chest. What started as a simple assault case at my dining table had turned into something way more sinister. When I got home, Emily was in the kitchen making some lunch. There was new energy about her now. Still fragile, sure, but more determined. "Where'd you go?" she asked me, putting water on to boil. "Meeting with my investigator friend," I replied carefully, placing that folder on the table. "Emily, we really need to talk some more." She looked at the folder first, then at me. Turned off the stove. "More bad news, I guess? Important information. Please sit down, honey." I showed her all the documents, carefully explaining Brad's pattern of behavior in his previous relationships. Emily listened in complete silence, her face going through so many emotions. Shock first, then pain, rage, and finally this real resolve. "So I wasn't special at all," she finally said, real quiet like. "I was just convenient to him." "You were a target," I corrected her softly. "But that don't diminish who you are. Predators like Brad are real skilled at identifying good people, trustworthy people, and then manipulating them." Emily ran her hand over her face, taking several deep breaths. "What do we do now?" "We gotta talk to the lawyer and the police too. These new documents, they strengthen everything." "His bail hearing's tomorrow, right?" "Yes, it is." "I don't gotta attend that, do I?" "You don't have to. But I want to go. I need to look him straight in the eyes, knowing the full truth now." The determination in Emily's voice really surprised me. In just a few days she'd gone from confused victim to a resolved survivor. That afternoon Emily and I worked out a plan real detailed. First she filed a petition for a contested divorce citing financial abuse and physical abuse too, with all our documents attached to it. Then we filed formal complaints for the financial crimes. Unauthorized use of retirement accounts, fraudulent credit cards. The attorney Linda walked us through every single step, making sure all documents were perfect. "We want to create a case so solid there ain't no room for him to escape," she explained clearly. "The combination of civil and criminal cases will create massive pressure." Next morning we got ready for the bail hearing. Emily chose a simple outfit. Navy dress pants, white button-down shirt. The kind of clothes she'd wear for a job interview. I picked out one of my suits from my DA days. A subtle reminder to that court of who I was. The courthouse was pretty empty when we arrived with Linda beside us. We got directed to the courtroom. Took quiet seats way in back. Emily held my hand real tight. Her fingers ice cold despite the warm day. When Brad got brought in wearing orange jail scrubs and handcuffs on, Emily gasped out loud. First time she'd seen him since that night he violated the order. Brad scanned the room quick. His eyes locked right on us. For a moment his expression softened when he saw Emily. But then he noticed our joined hands. His face twisted up into pure rage. He said something to his lawyer who looked our way, then shook his head. The judge walked in. Hearing started right up. Prosecutor presented everything. Flagrant violation of restraining order. Recent history of violence. Risk of witness intimidation. Furthermore, Your Honor, prosecutor added firmly, We got information that this defendant has a documented history of similar behavior in other jurisdictions. He's been involved in previous cases of domestic violence and financial fraud in both Phoenix and Denver. This was brand new information to Brad. He turned sharp toward his lawyer, looking visibly shocked. He didn't expect his past catching up so damn quick. Brad's public defender tried arguing hard that Brad had community ties, posed no real risk, could await trial out of custody. Judge listened to all the arguments with a stone-cold expression on her face before announcing her final decision. Considering the seriousness of this violation, the defendant's documented history, and the evident risk to these victims, I'm ordering that the defendant remain in custody until his trial, with possible review in 30 days upon presentation of an adequate supervision plan. Brad let out a sound of protest, quickly shut down by his lawyer. As officers came to take him back, he turned around, looked directly at Emily. "Please, baby." His voice sounded so desperate now. "Emily, don't let this happen to us. I love you. We can fix this, I swear." Emily didn't look away. She stood firm, looking right into the eyes of the man who'd betrayed her and abused her for so many months. She said nothing at all. Just watched as Brad got let out of that courtroom. It was the closure she really needed. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just silent acknowledgement that this chapter was finally ending. In the hallway after court ended, Emily finally let go of my hand, took a real deep breath. "I thought it'd be way harder," she confessed quietly. "Seeing him like that, hearing him beg me, but I could only think about everything we discovered together. Those other women, all the lies, those inheritance searches online. You're real strong, baby girl," I said, feeling such immense pride for my daughter. "I don't feel strong, not really," she replied honest. "I feel stupid for falling for this, for not seeing all the signs earlier." "You ain't stupid. You were manipulated by someone who turned manipulation into a real art form." On the drive home, we stopped quick at a hardware store. Emily had decided to repaint her room, a symbolic act of her new beginning. She picked out a soft lavender color. "Color of fresh starts," she described it. "Like spring flowers after a long winter." Following days brought this almost therapeutic routine to us. During the day we handled all the legal stuff. Meetings with Linda, visits to the bank, filling out endless forms for criminal complaints. At night we painted Emily's room, moved furniture around, renewed the space that had been hers in childhood and teenage years. That would now be her refuge for real healing. 2 weeks later we got great news. The bank had accepted the dispute completely of those retirement withdrawals. The 45 grand would be returned to Emily's account, and the bank promised to cooperate fully with criminal investigation against Brad. "It's a real start," Emily said quietly when we got that news. "One step at a time, right, Mom?" "Exactly right, honey." That afternoon, as we applied the final coat of lavender paint, Emily said something she'd been holding back. "You know what's the hardest part to accept right now? It ain't the money, ain't even the lies, not even the violence really. It's realizing that the last 3 years of my whole life were based on a total lie. That the person I loved so much never really existed at all." I climbed down from my ladder, sat on the edge of the bed protected by plastic tarps. Grieving for what you thought you had is often way harder than grieving for what you actually lost. Emily nodded slowly, climbed down too, sat right beside me. "How do I move forward now after all this? How do I ever trust anyone again?" "Slowly and carefully," I replied gently, "with support from people who truly love you. And by remembering what happened here, don't define who you are, or what you deserve in this life." She leaned her head on my shoulder, staining my old shirt with lavender paint. I didn't mind one single bit. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom," she whispered soft. "Even when I was so angry at you. Even when I chose the wrong damn side. That's what mothers do, baby. We wait patiently for the moment when our kids are ready to listen. Then we're right there to help them rebuild their lives." Month passed by. Life took on some new normal. Emily went back to her nursing job, now working full-time shifts. I returned to my retired routines, Reading every morning, gardening in afternoons, occasional dinners out with old friends. Criminal case against Brad moved forward slowly like the justice system always does. He stayed in custody, got denied again for release when more evidence of his past crimes came to light. Emily started going to therapy twice every week, working to understand what made her vulnerable to abuse like this, and how to build healthier relationships going forward into her future. Some nights still I'd hear her crying in her room, but those episodes were getting less frequent, less intense too. One Saturday afternoon as we fixed lunch together, an activity that had become our comforting ritual, the phone rang loud. It was Linda, our attorney. "I got news," Linda said quickly. "Brad's lawyer reached out proposing a plea deal." Emily put the phone on speaker mode so I could hear too. "What kind of deal we talking?" "He pleads guilty to all financial crimes and the restraining order violation, in exchange for reduced sentencing. 18 months in prison followed by 4 years supervised probation. He also agrees to no contest divorce, waiving any claims to your assets or your mother's future inheritance completely." Emily looked at me, her eyes seeking some guidance here. "What do you think, Mom?" "It's your decision, honey. But 18 months in prison plus 4 years of probation, that's pretty significant. And most important, he'd be legally admitting what he did to you." "If we don't accept," Emily asked Linda, "what happens then?" "We go to trial. With all our evidence, I believe strongly we can get a harsher conviction, maybe 3 or 4 years in prison. But trials are real unpredictable, and you'd have to testify publicly, reliving everything in front of strangers." Emily took a deep breath. "Can I think about it for a bit?" "Of course you can," Linda replied kindly. They gave us 72 hours to consider this proposal. After hanging up, Emily went back to chopping vegetables for our salad. I respected her silence, giving her space to process everything. "I don't know if I want seeing him locked up for 4 years, she finally said. "Not out of revenge. But I also don't know if 18 months is enough to feel truly safe when he gets out." "Supervised probation ain't no joke," I commented carefully. "He'd have to report regularly. Couldn't approach you at all. Would have to do rehab programs. Any single violation sends him straight back to jail immediately." Emily nodded slow, taking it all in. "And divorce would be way faster if he don't contest it. Much faster and way less emotionally draining for you, honey." She kept chopping those tomatoes in silence for a few more minutes. "I'm gonna think it over careful. Wanna make the right decision for the right reasons." 2 days later, Emily asked me to come with her to Linda's office. She'd made her final decision. "I wanna accept that plea deal," she announced firm, soon as we sat down there. "Not because it's the easy way, but because honestly it's enough justice. 18 months in prison, 4 years probation, clean divorce finalized, legal recognition of his guilt. It's real justice without being straight-up revenge." Linda smiled wide. "I think that's a real wise decision. I'll communicate it to the prosecutor and his lawyer immediately." Process moved surprisingly fast after that decision. Week later, we showed up in court again for the hearing where Brad would formally accept that plea. First time Emily would see him since that bail hearing a month back. Brad looked like he'd aged 10 years in just those few short weeks. The jail uniform hung real loose on his thinner frame, his once perfect hair now showing lots of gray throughout. When he saw us walking into court, his eyes fixed on Emily hard with disturbing intensity. Judge reviewed every term of the agreement real detailed like before addressing him direct. "Mr. Sullivan, do you understand by pleading guilty you're admitting you committed these crimes of financial fraud, assault and battery, and violation of a court order?" "Yes, Your Honor," Brad replied, voice way rougher than I remembered. "And you're doing so voluntarily, fully aware of all the consequences?" "Yes, I am." "Very well then. This court accepts your guilty plea and sentences you to 18 months of incarceration followed by 4 years of supervised probation. Specific terms include absolute prohibition of any contact with the victims, mandatory participation in anger management, alcohol treatment programs, plus full financial restitution as outlined in the civil agreement." Judge banged that gavel, finalizing the whole sentence. As officers came to take Brad away, he turned toward us one final time. "Emily," he called out loud, ignoring the guard's stern warnings. "I'm so sorry for absolutely everything." Emily didn't respond at all, just held his gaze for a few seconds before looking away completely. It was her closure, the kind she really needed most. Not forgiveness granted, not reconciliation offered. Just silent acknowledgement that this dark chapter was finally over. 3 months after that first assault, Emily got invited to speak out at a state conference on domestic violence awareness. She was nervous, questioning if she was ready to share her story on such a big public stage. "What if I'm not good enough at speaking?" she asked, worried as we practiced her presentation in our living room. "What if I freeze up in the middle and look like a total fool?" "Then you take a deep breath, sip some water, and you continue on," I replied calm. "Remember, honey, you ain't there to impress anyone with perfect public speaking. You're there to share a truth that could really help other people out there." Day of conference, I sat in that audience watching my daughter walk onto stage. She wore a simple lavender dress, hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked confident, real centered now. "My name's Emily Hayes," she began strong. "And today I'm gonna share with y'all how a broken glass of wine actually saved my life." For 40 minutes straight she kept that audience completely engaged, alternating between moments of raw vulnerability, describing her own abuse, and precise analysis of how our system often fails to recognize financial abuse patterns. She ended with a powerful call for better education, stronger laws, greater public awareness. The standing ovation she got when she finished speaking lasted several long minutes. As I watched, tears filled my eyes. Not tears of sadness but of deep, overwhelming pride. My daughter had transformed her pain into real purpose, her terrible experience into wisdom that could help so many others. After her talk, as we prepared to leave that place, Emily got approached by an older woman dressed real elegant with a badge showing she represented a big philanthropic foundation. "Ms. Hayes, your presentation was extraordinary," the woman said, warm. "I'm real impressed with the work you and your support group are doing now. I'd like to discuss funding to expand your safe harbor program." Emily looked at me, eyes wide with surprise and hope. I nodded, encouraging. "That'd be wonderful," Emily replied, excited. "We got so many ideas to reach more people, especially in rural areas where resources are real scarce." They exchanged business cards, set up a meeting for next week. As we walked toward the parking lot, Emily seemed to be floating with excitement. "Can you believe it, Mom?" she said, happy. "Real actual funding to expand our project. We could create materials in different languages, maybe develop an app for secure financial tracking, maybe even open a small office space." "You deserve it, baby girl," I replied, proud. "You worked so hard and you're making a real difference in people's lives." She stopped sudden in the parking lot, hugged me real tight. A strong hug full of gratitude. "None of this would have been possible without you, Mom. Without your strength that awful night. Your persistence after. Your support through this whole process." I hugged her back, feeling that peculiar sensation that only mothers know. Pride and nostalgia all at once. Seeing your child grow beyond what you could have ever imagined. You always had that strength inside you, honey. You just needed to rediscover it. That's all. That night driving home, Emily went to her new apartment. I reflected on the whole past year. The assault with that glass. The police report filed. Discovery of all those financial crimes. Brad's arrest and Emily's gradual recovery. And now this promising new chapter. Hard not to think about how one moment of violence, terrible as it was, had somehow triggered a series of events that brought not just justice served but also real healing and a greater purpose. That broken glass had shattered more than just crystal that night. It broke the power Brad had over Emily, the lies that built their relationship, and the dangerous illusion that abuse only happens to other people. In its place, we built something way stronger and newer. A renewed bond between mother and daughter. A shared purpose of transforming our own traumatic experience into real hope for others. I parked in the garage, walked inside my house, turned on the lights. Silence greeted me again. No longer that oppressive silence of deep loneliness, or that tense silence before the assault, but a peaceful silence of a life that weathered the storm and found real serenity on the other side. I made myself a cup of tea, sat on the deck watching that starry sky, remembered the words from Emily's therapist during one of our joint sessions. Sometimes we gotta break completely to rebuild ourselves way stronger. Like that crystal glass our family had shattered momentarily, but what we built from those fragments was more resilient, more authentic, and infinitely more precious than what we ever had before. Now if you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button. Tell me in comments what part really moved you most. And don't forget to share this story with someone who might need to hear it today.